Hello, Matrix Life Nation. Today's all about stem cells, and I've got a stem cell scientist. We've never had a stem cell scientist. We've had physicians and medical doctors and been using stem cells in my own regenerative medicine clinic for a long time and well trained in the US over the last 20 years. So it's an absolute privilege to have Christian Drapeau on the show, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. But he's a stem cell scientist and he's been in the industry for many, many years. So welcome to the Made to Thrive show.
My pleasure, Steve. Really glad to be here.
Brilliant. So I really want to find out just the overall framework, what is happening with stem cell enhancers. And I think that's important. Maybe you want to define what a stem cell is and then what a stem cell enhancer is.
Well, a stem cell traditionally has been known in medicine to be the precursors to blood cells. So they're making red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. What was sort of the big explosion of what is today's stem cell science and stem cell research is the discovery in the early 2000s that stem cells not only can become blood cells, but they can also become skin cells, muscle cells. I mean, essentially cells of pretty much everything in the body. And the difference between a stem cell, to really understand the role of a stem cell, the difference between a stem cell and other cells in the body is that all other cells in the body, normally called somatic cells, they are specialized. They have one specific identity. They do one specific thing, like a muscle cell will contract, a cell of your retina will respond to light, and so on. Cells of your pancreas will make insulin. A stem cell is almost like a blank cell or a master cell. It has no function really as a stem cell other than its ability to get into a tissue and then in its natural role of repair, basically become cells of that tissue.
Okay, brilliant. Now, stem cell enhancer, which I know STEMREGEN and just your company, which we'll get into the details later, the difference between, you can't eat a stem cell, maybe you can talk about that, but you can take in stem cell enhancers. So maybe just define that and why that is so important.
So stem cell enhancers are plant extract, for the most part, plant extract. I mean, we have worked with colostrum, for example. I know that deer antlers, there are products that could very well have a stem cell effect. But in my world, stem cell enhancers are plant extract. They're not plant stem cells. Plant extract that when we consume them by mouth, they will trigger the release of our own stem cells or enhance the role of our own stem cells as part of being the repair system of the body. And they do so through various mechanisms of action. And the way I think to think about them is simply to think, everybody knows that we have an immune system, and there are plants that can stimulate the immune system. Echinacea, astragalus, I mean, there's a truckload of these plants that have immune boosting properties. Stem cell enhancers are plants that support another part of our physiology, which is the repair system, which is our stem cells.
Okay, great. Now, why are stem cells so important? And if I look at my children, I've got a 20-year-old and an 8-year-old, they seem to heal quickly, bounce back quickly. And although my biological age, I think, is now 6 years younger than my chronological age, so I am working on that, being in functional medicine 25 years, done a lot of stem cell work, been in regenerative medicine for many, many years. What is happening with our stem cells as we grow older, and why are stem cells so important?
We are born with red marrow. In all of our bones, we have red marrow at birth. Very, very soon after birth, red marrow converts into fatty marrow, yellow marrow, which to a large extent does not make stem cells. And that conversion starts pretty much on day one. By age 15, we have lost about 50% of that red marrow. By age 30 or in our 30s, we have lost up to about 90% of our red marrow. So, and that is directly reflected by a decline in the number of stem cells in circulation, which is really what these are stem cells that are playing a role in tissue repair and tissue maintenance. So we all experience at some point in our 30s, we get an injury and we realize we're just not repairing as well as we used to. And it's directly related to the fact that we just don't have as many stem cells to repair that specific injury. To me, the biggest impact of all that knowledge is to realize that while stem cells play a role as part of the repair system to repair an injury on the day that we have an injury, in the background, they play an absolutely vital role in simply replacing the cells that are lost every day. Stem cell research has revealed that we experience aging as a slow decline, but that is not physiologically how it's happening in the body. How it's happening in the body is that every day of our lives, our health is the result of a balance between two forces. We lose cells every day, and we replace these cells every day, and that's the role of stem cells. So every organs and tissue in the body is constantly going through a process of tissue turnover. We get a new skin every month, a new liver every 2-3 years, a new half of a new heart every 25 to 50 years. Everything is in turnover. But if by age 30s or in our 30s we have lost up to 90% of our stem cells, there's a point where we don't have enough stem cells to offset that process of cellular loss that actually, because of wear and tear, oxidative stress, systemic inflammation, all kinds of reasons, actually accelerates. We lose more and more cells. They're less and less effective, and we have fewer and fewer stem cells to offset that cellular loss. So there's a point in our 30s, early 40s, where we start to accumulate unrepaired tissue damages that will accumulate over the years. Very, very small every day. But if it accumulates in your pancreas, what is the outcome of losing cells in your pancreas? It's diabetes. What is the outcome of losing cells in your heart? It's heart disease. In your brain, Parkinson, and so on. Every single age-related disease is the outcome of a slow accumulation of cellular loss. And the reason why I'm saying this is that I published this view that the formation of age-related disease fundamentally all depends upon the fact that there's a decline, natural decline with age in the number of circulating cells. I published this in 2013. And in that paper, I was saying there's a way to test for this. Let's go and count the number of stem cells in the bloodstream of people who have developed any one of these age-related disease. And they should have fewer stem cells than healthy people of the same age. Now there's about 50 of those studies that have been published. And if you look at the number of stem cells in people who have heart disease, atherosclerosis, hypertension, erectile dysfunction, liver failure, kidney failure, COPD, emphysema, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, lupus, arthritis, and the list keeps growing. They all have 50% or less than the number of stem cells that you find in healthy people of the same age. So while stem cells are important in tissue repair, they play an absolutely vital role in maintaining our health as we age.
Sure. Wow. Well said and well summarized. Fantastic. And, obviously you would want to measure this. Is this measurement or assessment? Because we do a lot of assessments, functional medicine assessments, from urine to stomach to stool to blood to genetics to epigenetics to every single test that you can imagine. Yeah, but measuring stem cells, is this readily available, and what does the science say about it?
I mean, it's available. It's been available for a long time. In the studies, when we study the effect of the plants, which I have done for the past 20 plus years, we use that technology, which is a flow cytometer. So it's a machine so you take a blood sample, you inject, you clean the sample, you extract the lymphocytes, you prepare the sample. But when you inject it into a flow cytometer, all the cells will line up one behind the other into a very, very small tube, and then they will pass in front of a laser behind which there's a photosensitive plate, and it's going to essentially see that cell passing through. So it will measure its size by measuring its shadow, its luminescence. Every single type of white blood cells have a different response to light. And then you can also use antibodies to specific cell markers tied with specific color dyes. And then if a cell passes through that has an antibody tied to a red dye, but it's an antibody for a marker for stem cell, for example, then the counter will count that as a stem cell. Mm-hmm. So that technique has been used for a long time to count stem cells in the blood. However, it is not a machine that is available in your typical lab where you go to do a blood test or a typical doctor's office. So right now, it's virtually impossible for anyone to just say, I would like to know how many stem cells I have in my blood. We are working with that technology, give it maybe a year or two, and we're in process right now. So the point is to validate the technology, to be able to make that available at fairly low cost in a normal blood lab or doctor's office. I have to say, however, that everyone have their own circadian cycle. So counting your number of stem cells by itself is not really relevant. I mean, it is relevant, but if you really want to know the number and not just sort of a range, you need to do this at a specific time of the day. You need to really rest an hour or two before you actually do your blood sample. There are many factors that can influence the ability to quantify the amount of stem cells that you have in your bloodstream. But it's totally doable. That's what we do in our studies.
Brilliant. Always like to measure things and looking at health optimization, how important that is when you use different products. So glad to hear that. But now, the audience is listening and the viewers, tell us 2 case studies, stories of, people that have come into your community with a condition, male, female, maybe an autoimmune or maybe a cancer story, something that people can say, wow, I've tried so many different things and now I'm hearing about these stem cell enhancers. What type of conditions and what type of testimonies are pretty common when people take stem cell enhancers?
Okay. It is very easy here to look at a product like STEMREGEN and just say it's just a bunch of plant extracts. So it's really just a noble extract like 1,000 other plant extracts. And normally we don't expect a whole lot, from plant extract. Yeah, they're good for your health, but like it's not life-changing. And we just need to understand here, the moment that you put more stem cells in circulation, and the data here in the scientific literature is absolutely not only undeniable, but we're talking about tens of thousands of papers that have reported those kinds of results. So the moment you put more stem cells in circulation, let's say you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, the number of stem cells that you have could be like a third or a fourth from what you had when you were in your 20s. So if we can double the number of stem cells in your bloodstream, we are going to put you back, let's say 10, 20 years earlier on that day in your ability to repair. If you do this every day or over long periods of time, we give back to your body its own innate ability to repair, which could be like quite significant. So I just wanted to put that out before I share you some of the cases, because these stories are virtually, like I would say, almost like unbelievable. And I won't just give you cases, because we have started now to do studies. For example, we've had in South Africa a number of years ago, we had a man with 5 heart attacks in 1 week. So he ended up with an ejection fraction of 13%. Normal ejection fraction is above 50%. So this is somebody who would walk, let's say, 3-4 steps, and then he would have to stop, chest pain, he would be out of breath. So basically, just eating would put him out of breath. So very difficult life. The only option was heart transplant. So as he was waiting for a heart, they send him back home, really telling him, prepare to pass, because you may very well pass before we get a heart. Then at that time, he got on our product and he started to improve like very quickly. After like 2-3 months later, he got a call for a heart. He walked himself, like he drove himself to the hospital, climbed up the stairs. When they saw how he was walking, they canceled the surgery, did a bunch of tests on him. And the conclusion, I think he was at 48% ejection fraction. Conclusion, he was just like just about any 65-year-old that we would take on the street. So out of a number of those cases, we started a study on stable chronic congestive heart failure. It's an ongoing study. We just submitted a paper with the first 10 patients, and of those 10 patients, all with stable chronic congestive heart failure. So these are people who would climb, let's say, 1 flight of stairs, and then they would have to sit down at the top and rest for 10 minutes to catch their breath. And they're chronic, meaning after more than 2 years, this is whatever medicine could do with them, for them. So within 6 months on STEMREGEN, 10 out of 10 have regained normal heart function. This is the results of one study. So we've submitted these results for publication. We have started also a study on Parkinson on the basis of all the cases of Parkinson that we have seen over the years. And quite frankly, when I started this 23 years ago, I would not have chosen heart disease and Parkinson. They're not conditions that are known to repair very well. They would not have been my choice. But based on all the observations that we have seen, then we started a study. And I'm actually right now working on analysis of preliminary data. But basically, after 3 months, so far the data is pointing to about 50% reduction in motor symptoms, motor skills, about 36% the reduction in depression, and about 56% overall improvement in quality of life. We're going to start a study on liver failure because of the cases that we have seen. We have had cases of same thing. Basically, put on a list for liver transplant with sometimes a prognostic of, like, these patients were told within 3 months, you have about 50% of just not being there in 3 months. And within about 6 weeks of being on the product, they basically just have a normal life. So we have cases on virtually just about any kind of degenerative problem, and the product is not miraculous. We just give back the body its innate ability to repair, like you had 10, 20 years ago, and then your body just repairs. It's what your stem cells are doing. So I can give you more, but just sort of like an overview of the kind of benefits that we have seen. And it's like this for virtually anything in the body that is the outcome of something that is broken. By broken, I mean you've lost cells in that organ, it's not functioning properly, your stem cells can repair.
Okay. And what is your experience or your studies or case studies with regard to cancer and increasing the number of stem cells?
Cancer is in the very early days. So we are in 2002, 2003, and we're discovering that this product, the first product that I was working with, which was blue green algae from Klamath Lake, we're trying to understand why various people have different kinds of benefits touching the heart, the lung, so many different aspects of human health. We have no understanding until this idea that what if stem cells are the repair system, and what if that plant act as a stem cell enhancer? So we tested this. We discovered that plant was putting more stem cells in circulation. One of the first concern was, what if those stem cells stimulate cancer, tumor growth in whatever ways? It was really just an intellectual question, because it's interesting to see that all the plants today that have been identified as stem cell enhancers, those that you find in STEMREGEN, all these plants historically have been used for cancer, to treat cancer. So there's no data here that it can stimulate cancer, but scientifically, as we start to work in that field, it's a question that we had to investigate. So we did a mouse model in which we injected human breast cancer cells, and then we monitored the growth of breast tumors in the mice. One group was controlled, one group we gave them every day 10 times the amount of this blue-green algae extract that we had shown act as a stem cell mobilizer, stem cell enhancer. And what we saw after 6 weeks was a 30% reduction in tumor growth, which really reflects what we have seen over the years. It is probably, I won't put a number on it because all of this is just like, it's very subjective observation, but let's say top 10. It's among the top 10 most commonly reported benefits. People take the product for their injured knees for whatever reason, but they also happen to have prostate cancer, breast cancer, cancer of some kind. And then they come back, let's say 6 to 8 weeks later, with significant reduction in tumor. So it is a very commonly reported benefit. And I believe that the mechanism of action is simply that stem cells are naturally attracted to a tumor. This is well documented. When a stem cell migrates into a tumor, a stem cell is not going to start to behave like the other cell. It's going to behave according to its own DNA, which basically encodes for the function of that stem cells to first multiply and then transform into cells of that tissue. When stem cells multiply and transform, they release exosomes that are communicating with other stem cells in their area, so that stem cells behave like as a community. They don't behave like one stem cell migrating in a tissue is completely irrelevant. It's one of billion of cells in that tissue. It's completely irrelevant. It's a community that makes a difference. So as they start to differentiate, and they communicate and coordinate the differentiation of a community of proliferating cells, they all differentiate. Well, a tumor cell is a cell that is caught into this process of proliferation. When you trigger its differentiation, it stopped proliferating. So I believe that it's the mechanism of action of this phenomenon. We do not use it. We do not even recommend it for cancer, simply because in the FDA here in the US and pretty much everywhere around the world, a plant promoting that a plant has an effect for cancer is one of the biggest red flags. So we do no promotion whatsoever. But all of this for me is just to say, at the very least, we don't have any concern for cancer with a product like this that put more stem cells into circulation.
Brilliant. And I don't know exactly what is in STEMREGEN in terms of its constituents, but maybe you want to comment on fucoidan or sea buckthorn berry, aloe macroclada. I've done a bit of research in terms of these plant enhancers because you've obviously put this together, but obviously give us a little bit of a background on those plants and how they stimulate stem cells.
Okay, so first, how they were discovered. They were discovered pretty much like the first plant, this blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. We observed that plant was doing many different things in different people. So we discovered it acts as a stem cell enhancer. So you release stem cells in a Parkinson patient. Well, the brain is broken. The brain attracts those stem cells. Same thing for the diabetic patient, the lung patient, and so on. So that's how we discovered how it was working. So immediately I turn around and my question was, what are the other plants known historically to be associated with a broad range of benefits? And let's go and study those plants. So we did medicinal mushroom, things like astragalus, adaptogens, those kinds of plants. And we found that they all have an effect on stem cells, not necessarily releasing stem cells, but a lot of these polysaccharide-based products trigger actually the migration of stem cells out of the blood into tissues. We can come back to that later, but I thought it's fascinating to see how our plants can touch stem cells at different steps in their whole function, if you want, in the body. But some of the very cool plants that we found act as stem cell mobilizer, meaning releasing stem cells, are things like sea buckthorn berry. So at some point, I had a chance to go to remote areas of the world. Like what are they using on the Tibetan plateau? That is their go-to plant there in that higher region of the Himalayas. What is their go-to plant? And sea buckthorn berry has been used for 2,000 years, more than 2,000 years, in Tibetan medicine, Mongolian medicine, Chinese medicine, for problems of the lung, of the heart, cardiovascular system, pancreas, and to accelerate repair from bone fracture, burn to the skin, and wound to the skin. So you look at this broad spectrum of benefits. I thought maybe it's an effect on stem cells. So I went to the Tibetan plateau. I went to a farm with them. I developed an extract of sea buckthorn berry. We tested it on stem cells, and we saw that within about 2-3 hours of consumption, we have an increase of about 40% in the number of stem cells in circulation. And also, sea buckthorn berry extract historically has been used for specific cancers, like lung cancer, for example. In this whole process of looking worldwide to different plants, in Madagascar, they have like 65 species of aloe, but they've used historically one specific species called aloe macroclada to make a specific product called Vahona in Madagascar. Vahona has been used for centuries for all kinds of health problems, and more specifically is to help older men in the field to just keep working in the field without all the aches and pains, like to just longevity. So I went to Madagascar, we collected an extract of aloe macroclada, tested it, and so far it's the one that has given us the strongest result on stem cell release. It's not a product that is available in the marketplace really, so we had to develop the collection, the co-op to harvest it, the processing plants and everything. So now we have a facility with a partner of ours in Madagascar to collect this ingredient, to have it as part of STEMREGEN. Fucoidan, as you know, in South Africa, I believe it's harvested from South Africa, but also from New Zealand, from various areas in the world. So fucoidan is a polysaccharide that is extracted from brown seaweed, different kinds of seaweeds, and it has been used essentially on the marketplace for two main applications: cancer and inflammation, like arthritis. But there's good data that it has an effect on stem cells. Papers were published around 2007, even 2001, documenting its effect on stem cells. So we started to study fucoidan from various seaweeds, and according to their benefits on stem cell release, then we've included fucoidan from Fucus vesiculosus into STEMREGEN. So that's basically the various plans that we have on STEMREGEN, all documented, all discovered, all tested by our team, by myself, to see and document their effect on releasing stem cells from our own bone marrow. And all these studies were done in humans.
Okay, so having done regenerative medicine for 15 years now, over 32,000 sessions of prolotherapy and PRP, how will you take STEMREGEN? Would you get one of my patients to take it a week before, a month before? If they just come for a consult, do they take it before, while they're doing it, months afterwards? Do you have any experience working with regenerative medicine specialists in the States or worldwide, how your product could help regenerate the meniscus in the knee, maybe ligaments in the back? So we do a lot of regeneration of white tissue, which doesn't have good blood supply, ligaments, capsules, tendons, discs, meniscuses in the knees. What is your thoughts or your experience combining this with regenerative medicine techniques?
If you take stem cells from, let's say, the bone marrow, the blood, or any body compartment, it does not apply so much to fat-derived stem cells. But PRP, for example, if you take STEMREGEN release, let's say 1 month before the procedure, the person will have released stem cells every day. So we see a small increase in stem cells in the bone marrow, but definitely more in the blood. And within, let's say, 2 hours before the blood draw in your lab, in your office, then if the person will take, let's say, 4 to 6 capsules of STEMREGEN, there'll be a significant release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So you will end up with more stem cells in that blood sample. So as you centrifuge that blood sample and prepare it for injection, you will have way more stem cells in that sample. You also have, when you do PRP, you will also concentrate a very specific fraction of stem cells called V cells, or small stem cells. They're about the size of platelets. What we have shown also is that STEMREGEN will not only put more of those stem cells in circulation, but will also activate a portion of these stem cells. So your injection is going to be simply stronger. If you release your stem cells with STEMREGEN, while we have seen in patients, we have cases of things like knee degeneration, people scheduled for knee surgery that within a matter of like 6 to 10 weeks no longer need the knee surgery. We have seen this. We have those cases. But it's not super common because stem cells normally don't have a great access to inside the joint because you don't have a lot of blood vascularization inside the joint. So an injection will be more potent. But if the problem is associated with tendon, ligaments, all the tissue around the joints, releasing stem cells your stem cells will then participate to that tissue repair, that process of tissue repair. So in the month or 2 that follows your procedure, having the patient release its own stem cells will every day bring stem cells that your injection, now that stem cells are in the joint and around the joint, they will do what stem cells do, which is release exosomes, do the whole process of tissue repair, recruit additional stem cells in this whole process. As you put more stem cells in circulation in the month or 2 that follows your procedure, you will amplify the benefit or the outcome of that procedure. So we work with a lot of regenerative medicine clinics that use STEMREGEN in combination with their own procedure, and they invariably they get better results.
Great. Maybe offline we can just chat about those other professionals that love to get their perspective, maybe put them on the podcast. At the end of the day, a lot of people are degenerating like you've never seen before. We've seen joint hypermobility syndrome, things like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, just the lack of structural integrity coming from ligaments and joints. And there's lots of reasons why, which I don't want to get into, but anything that can help regeneration and bring stability to the musculoskeletal frame is very, very important. Let's talk about your book, Cracking the Stem Cell Code. If you had to give one message, because I do have a very experienced and well-researched audience. But what would be the main big idea you'd want people to get out of your book? Because at the end of the day, I don't think there's a lot of clear understanding and application of stem cells and why they're important. And, having been in practice for a long time, I think one of the most important things is to educate people, take them along a journey. Why are they doing certain things? So give us your big message of the book. We will put a link to the book, which I think is important. But what is Cracking the Stem Cell Code about?
For you and probably most of your audience, actually everybody virtually who has not really taken a deep dive into this, stem cells, it's a treatment. You go somewhere, you get a stem cell injection, and the variables are: where are they coming from? Bone marrow, blood, fat tissue, umbilical cord stem cells, dental pulp stem cells. They're different sources of stem cells. Then how they are manipulated in the lab, processed, and how they are injected. These are the variables. What rarely people talk about or can hear is that those stem cells that are coming from your bone marrow, from your blood, from your fat tissue, from your dental pulp, from your hair follicles, and there are other sources, connective tissue, they're all in your body to begin with. So they're not better because we take them out and put them back in. They're the same stem cells. So that means if they have enormous regenerative potential, they already have these regenerative potentials in your body. So for me, the question that has fascinated me since the very early days of stem cell research is, what is then the natural role of stem cells in the body? And how can we leverage that role? So we can leverage it with those plant extract, those stem cell enhancers that we talked about. But the aim of the book was that, in the first edition of this was in 2010. So, and even to a large extent today, there's nothing that has been really written about what is the natural role of stem cells in the body. So it's everywhere in the scientific literature. There are hundreds, thousands of papers talking about the natural role of stem cells in the body, but nowhere all of this is collected together to describe in a step-by-step fashion how your stem cells are working in the body, just like how your immune system is working in the body. That's the message of the book. Your stem cells are literally your repair system. Just like the body has an immune system, the body has a repair system. There's a series of chapters that will describe what does that mean for diabetes, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease, various aspects of human health. And the last edition of the book, I've added another section which was not in the earlier section because at the time in 2010 when we published the book in the United States, we were the only group, only company having a product with an effect on stem cells, and sharing data about heart disease and all these problems could have been construed by the FDA as being an indirect claim to disease, which we cannot do in the United States. So we did not include that data. Today, it's very well established. Other companies are doing it. It's not branded to our product in any way. It's very generic about what are these plant extract and how they're working. So there's a section that is talking about these various plants, the scientific data that we have about them, and about 5 or 6 cases, some of them that are shared today on that podcast, documented through medical records of how the impact of taking these plant stem cell mobilizers, stem cell enhancers on heart disease, stroke, diabetes, arthritis, that kind of stuff.
Okay, good. Are there any sort of risks or concerns with taking this blue-green algae or the sea buckthorn berry or this fucoidan? Do you have any concerns or any risks that someone would need to know about before they take the product?
There's none. And well, let me make one parenthesis. Since the very early days, I have told people we have maintained this line, which is to say, if you have a disease of the bone marrow, don't stimulate the bone marrow. So leukemia, any kind of problems of the bone marrow. All I could say 23 years later is that I am not aware of one case of somebody with any condition of the bone marrow that has taken any one of these plants or STEMREGEN that came back with some sort of negative report. I have doctors that have told me over the years, not many, but like I can remember 2 doctors who came to tell me that in their opinion, I should stop making that warning because they had patients that did very well on the product. I do personally have cases. One was the mother of one of our employees, who basically on the product, her condition of having too few platelets in her blood normalized. We've had other people with too many platelets that have also normalized. What I have seen over the years is enough to tell me that there should not be any concern. But we continue to maintain, just for the sake of being cautious, to maintain that. If you have a disease of the bone marrow, don't take the product. But it's really just sort of a line for excessive caution. Outside of that, there's really no side effects. There's no cautionary statements to be made. And the thing to understand is that all these plants that are in STEMREGEN, how did we discover them? We discovered them because there was a long history of use pointing in the direction of repair, touching various aspects of human health. Then we went to study them. So we look back at these plants, and if any one of these plants have risk that has been associated over the centuries to their use, then we don't study them, because we know that even if we discover something marvelous, then we're blocked into their use because they're associated with risk. So all these plants have really a long history of use with a great record of safety. So there's no issue taking the product.
Excellent. And thank you for that comprehensive, answer. But what else can someone do? 48% of our listeners are in the US. Do they do fasting that helps release stem cells, low calorie diets, exercise, sauna? What are the other lifestyle hacks, or not hacks, but habits that people can take on that'll help release stem cells and also help any of these products increase the number of stem cells in the body?
So what I'm realizing more and more as I do my own research and other teams are doing research is just like when you have something that is going to help you recover faster from a cold, you expect, even if you don't have a clear understanding, you expect that it has some effect on the immune system. And there are tons of things that have an effect on the immune system. I'm starting to realize that it's probably going to be exactly the same for stem cells. They are your repair system, and anything that supports repair indirectly or directly is having an effect on stem cells in the body. So let me now take this very broad answer and bring it to what I know. And I'm saying this first as a first response because I am sure that as we move over time, there's just a lot of things that probably has an effect on stem cells. But let me answer it from what we know from actual science studies. We know that fasting more than 3 days will put more stem cells in circulation. We know that severe or intense physical activity associated with micro traumas in tissues will trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. I'm not saying now, when I looked over time, the experience of athletes, I'm not going to say that going to an intense session of physical activity that will create tissue damage is a way for longevity, because the stem cells that you release their aim is to go and repair the damage that you just created. So somewhere it's not necessarily the budget of stem cells in your body is not necessarily enhanced by creating micro injuries in your body, but it will put more stem cells in circulation. Of all the diets, the keto diet is what is so far has been shown to support stem cells the most. I would say it's probably caused by the fact that a lot of the benefits of fasting for more than 3 days is mimicked in animal studies by a keto diet. So a lot of benefits are actually linked to ketones in your bloodstream. So if you have a keto diet, you gain a lot of the benefits of stem cells, and that includes of fasting, and that includes stem cells. Fasting more than 3 days has been not a lot of documentation, but enough to point in the direction that it looks like you're actually regenerating even your stem cells, because the effectiveness of stem cells also, not only your number, but their effectiveness decline also as we age. But if you take stem cells from the bone marrow of a person and you look at their ability to migrate and proliferate, and now the person goes through a 3 days fast, and then you take another sample of their bone marrow stem cells, they will behave in terms of migration and proliferation as younger stem cells. So it seems to also rejuvenate stem cells, which is amazing. And that's probably one of the main reasons why fasting is so good for longevity, or has been associated, with longevity. Red lights has been shown to support migration of stem cells into tissues. Pulse electromagnetic frequencies has been right now, most of the benefits of PMF is likely to be associated to their effect on stem cells, which is migration into the tissue, proliferation, and differentiation in tissue cells. Most of the data right now is focused on differentiation into bone, ligaments, tendons, connective tissue, everything that is surrounding a joint. And it's probably why PMF is so good for joints. And then the plants that we have described that are having an effect on stem cells. We are the team that has basically, I'm almost the only scientist that has focused a lot on these plants. So STEMREGEN right now is one of the only product that has solid science behind its effect on releasing stem cells. So that's pretty much like the biggest overview of what we know that we can do to help stem cells. Stress will suppress the effect of stem cells in the body. So try to develop a lifestyle where you can really control stress. Because if you live like any normal modern human being that has a life that is associated with a daily level of anxiety, during that day, the role of your stem cells has been suppressed. Add this over 1, 2, 3, 4 decades, and you can easily understand why you've developed various types of age-related problems. Is that because all these decades you have suppressed the ability of stem cells of just maintaining your health as you age. So it's the number of stem cells, but it's also their effectiveness. Smoking is also going to suppress stem cell function, and drinking is also alcohol is also going to suppress stem cell function.
Brilliant. Maybe on that thinking, just what pharmaceuticals, we really concerned about things like non-steroidals, anti-inflammatories. 20,000 Americans lose their life every year from overuse of anti-inflammatories, things like cortisone that is given out. What are the most, top 3 drugs that can really affect the number of stem cells and the release of stem cells?
Unfortunately, very little research has been done on this, but we can say that anything cortisone and anything related to corticosteroids will suppress the role of stem cells in the body. And that is a direct translation from the science that has shown how anxiety triggers suppressed stem cell function. So it was done by you take a rat and you take a blood sample, you look at the effectiveness of these stem cells, put the animal in water for a few minutes, which is extreme anxiety for a rat. And then you take it back of the water, take another blood sample, and look at stem cell function, and you see that it's significantly reduced. If you remove the adrenal glands and do the same process, you don't see that impact. So it's directly linked to the release of corticosteroids. So corticosteroids will traditionally suppress stem cell function, and there are other drugs that will do that. They're escaping me right now, but not a lot of research has been done in that area. I will say, as an extension of what I said before, that it looks like the more we study things that are associated with repair and longevity, it looks like they all have a positive effect on stem cells. When we start to look at things that suppress tissue repair, they look like they all have an effect on suppressing stem cell function. So I will say, generally speaking, just extend that thinking hypothetical that anything that we know is not helping tissue repair, then probably it has a negative effect on stem cell function.
Okay. Brilliant. What I do want the audience to hear is that obviously lifestyle is important. We see a lot of corporates and executives and CEOs and entrepreneurs and business leaders, and it's not about simple as taking STEMREGEN and then drinking all day ultra processed foods, not looking after your relationships or your exercise. What do you think the most important thing that someone can do if they take these plant stem cell enhancers?
I would say the 2 main obstacles, like oftentimes when I lecture, I show this video. It was done probably like 15 years ago, where a group of scientists took the heart of a mouse, circulated digestive enzymes in the cardiac muscle, that completely digested the heart muscles. At the end, they're left with the connective tissue, the collagen of the heart that still retains the trace that it was a heart. And on that carcass of the heart, they put the stem cells taken from the same animal. They just lay down on that connective tissue. And a week later, they have a beating heart in a test tube. Just a testament to the unbelievable regenerative potential of stem cells. Why are stem cells not doing this to that extent in the body? Now, we do have those cases. I talked about this fellow with 13% ejection fraction, and within a matter of a few weeks, the heart was completely regenerated. We have quadriplegics getting mobility. We have seen this in cases, but we don't see this in everybody. What are the things that will stand in the way of that full regenerative power? And the two main ones that will come to mind is systemic inflammation and poor microcirculation. If something in your body is chronic, that means for a long time it was deprived of its ability to repair. It could be a lower number of stem cells, but it's also most likely due to poor microcirculation in that area, so stem cells don't have access to that area. So things that will support microcirculation, so things like nattokinase, physical activity. Physical activity will increase microcirculation. Red lights. These are things to do, pulse electromagnetic frequencies. These are things to do that will support that microcirculation of stem cells. And for systemic inflammation, and the other one is systemic inflammation. Systemic inflammation is not in your body, should be a localized phenomenon, alerting stem cells, among other things, of where the injury is, so that when they circulate into these fine capillaries, they're attracted to migrate out of the capillaries to go and repair that area of your body. That's one of the main roles of inflammation. When you have an area that is not repairing and it continues to release inflammation signals that become systemic, now that signal is everywhere. So the stem cell has lost its ability to directly identify where they need to go. They get activated in your main systemic circulation, not into the fine microcirculation where they should migrate. So it really dumbs them, like it deafens them. They can no longer listen to the signal. It blinds them. So suppressing systemic inflammation. So I normally tell people, take colored food. All the food that has colors, they have polyphenols that carry these colors. Most polyphenols have some level of anti-inflammatory properties, some more than others. Sea buckthorn berry is a good, curcumin is a good one. Berries have been, contain polyphenols that have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, antioxidant properties as well. Antioxidant properties, anti-inflammatory properties. These are like little brothers and sisters. Like they do some of the same things. So I would say add a lot of colorful ingredients in your diet.
Brilliant. Christian Drapeau, I wanted to just declare favor and blessing over you. You've taken time, your calling, your expertise. It's been an absolute privilege. The last question I have is, I've been in medicine 25 years, and many days is just absolute despair and discouragement, a little bit of compassion fatigue that I've had, seeing thousands and thousands of people, and people are getting sicker far sooner. Kids, I had Dr. Gator on my show, integrative pediatrician. 50% of American children have a chronic disease. The numbers are going in the wrong direction. And as I say this, I've got goosebumps all over me, just because every time I speak about it, it's just a very sad situation. But give a message of hope for people hearing, because I think people do need a lot of hope. And maybe you can just frame it with regards to your research and your calling in stem cells.
I think, I was in 2001, 2002, when we had expressed this hypothesis that stem cells are the repair system of the body. And we had a plant that was putting more stem cells in circulation. At the time, it was just an idea. Like, I didn't know really what it would do in people's health. So with a friend who was a naturopathic doctor, and he was receiving a lot of patients having all kinds of health issues, I shipped him product and I says, give that to your patients. Let me know what you see. And the results that came out from that initial test were just absolutely mind-blowing. And I remember looking at this purely as a scientist and thinking, oh my goodness, we are putting an end to disease. And then in the past 20 some years, was sort of the mission to bring that information out, giving access to that information. It has been way more difficult than I thought it would be, because I really do believe that when everything that we've talked about on this podcast sinks in the medical profession, in medical science, in academia, to understand that the human body has a repair system. Everything that the patients that you're talking about that go to your office, every single one of them have something that is broken. We're not fixing, how could I say, if the part that is broken is caused by an autoimmune problem, for example, or a degenerative process, we're not necessarily getting rid of the problem. We're repairing the tissue to increase quality of life and giving time to go and find what's the cause and removing the cause. But overall, in terms of as a strategy for treatment, as a strategy for all these people, having a means, an understanding, and then the means of boosting the body's ability to repair, we've just like magnified, I think, the potential and the arsenal of a doctor treating with patients. I think that we're changing. I don't mean me. I mean, this knowledge on stem cells, the scientific community, as this gets more and more developed, I think we're literally changing the face of the planet in terms of health and wellness, aging, longevity. It just needs to sink in more and be utilized more. But I believe this will make a big difference.